Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. Today's video is going to be a little different from the videos that I usually do, but I don't really know of any other way to show you guys what's going on with some things with the garden right now. It is the outdoor garden related mostly, but I have some things going on in here. I sort of brought the garden inside and it's really cool, so I wanted to show it off. Nutmeg in particular, and saffron actually. I've been really interested in what I brought inside, and that's gonna be some swallowtail caterpillars. I know I did a video about them a year or two ago, but I think they're really fun, and I still feel like a lot of people don't know what to do if you get swallowtails or monarchs or any other type of caterpillar. That is a good one to keep around, and you can't just leave them be. A lot of the times they'll be fine, especially with swallowtails that aren't endangered at all. But with monarchs, they do have declining populations, so whenever I see one, I like to bring it inside. I don't have any monarchs right now for some reason. Every year I've been here, they've come to my yard except for this year, and I have more milkweed than ever, so I'm not really sure why that's happening. But the swallowtails are super cool, so I want to show you guys them. So they're in this setup over here. You can get these anywhere really, like Amazon, and I've used this for a few years, which is why you can see an open chrysalis right there. So I'll open this up, and you can see already inside there's a caterpillar couple. They're visible. So swallowtail caterpillars have a very specific diet. I think there's 3 still crawling around. The rest are in the chrysalis stage now. Let me see if I can get one out safely to show y'all. Yes, I can. Okay, this is one. I don't know if it'll focus, but so this is what one looks like. They can either be green or brown. These have all turned up being brown. I think there's an old wives' tale that the brown ones will stay for the whole winter, and I have had some stay for the winter before, but swallowtails have a very specific diet. They're not quite as picky as, say, a monarch would be. Monarchs only eat milkweed, but these swallowtails are pretty picky, and it also depends on the type of swallowtail that you get. So I have, these are the black swallowtails. This is what they're going to look like. This is the last stage of the black swallowtail before they turn into a chrysalis and then a butterfly. So I've got one over here as well. Super cute. This is parsnips. That is what that one's eating. The other one that I just showed off is eating carrots. They also like fennel, dill, and I think there is something else. Oh, parsley. They like parsley. Okay, so those are the main things that they eat. Also rue, that's not edible for us, but it is something that they like. So those are the things that they eat. I grow a lot of that in my garden, and as you might imagine, it's pretty popular to grow those things in a lot of gardens. So that is what they eat. They'll show up quite a bit, and once they're ready, they'll make a chrysalis, and it's pretty key that they stick to something harder, like a stick or a stake, something like that. Sometimes they'll do the edges of this, and then once they come out, because they're on a flat surface like that, they are more likely to be safe when they're open. I did see one open last year that just wasn't the safest, and unfortunately it didn't make it because the wings were all messed up. So that's very important. That's why I've got lots of sticks of different sizes in here for them, and they have the opportunity to climb to the top as well. I think it's a lot of fun raising them, even though they are not endangered per se. It just is a nice way to get a lot of experience, especially if you want to do monarchs, but you don't have any experience with caterpillars. These are a great start. There are things out there that will kill these as well, and I just love seeing butterflies. So I love having every opportunity that I can get to make these happy and healthy. That being said as well, I do still have some swallowtails outside. If you can't see this one, it is right here. It's a pretty large one as well. It's doing great. It is on one of my fennels that has bloomed. I'm probably gonna leave it be. It looks almost done. And I have 8 or 9 in my little enclosure right now. So I think I'll just let this one be, but I wanted to show you what you can look for if you want to find them on your plants. Speaking of caterpillars, I also found something very interesting this week. This is a morning glory, just a native wild morning glory that just started growing up our shovel, and my husband liked the aesthetic, so he left it be. But unfortunately for my husband, these massive larvae just decided to take over, and they have pretty much eaten most of it down, which is fine because they're pretty big by now. They should be going into a chrysalis stage soon, and I didn't know what they were at first. I mean, they are really big, they look kind of weird, and they're very aggressive eaters. So I looked them up, and they are called the pink spotted hawk moth, and they're also known as the sweet potato hornworm. I just thought that was super interesting because they do remind me of tomato hornworms, given how they look on the bottom here. I think they're super cool. They're much bigger than a tomato hornworm, and I didn't find any on the sweet potatoes this time around. I mean, there could be more later, but I have seen actually a dead one of these moths last year in our yard, and I think that's what probably originally attracted it to the yard. They are such a pretty moth. I really do encourage you to look it up, but they are so cool. I mean, they're so big. You can kind of see them in relation to the shovel. They're just massive little worms, I guess you could call them. They're so freaking cool. So I wanted to show them off a little bit. I didn't really have any other way to do that, but they just look so cool. I just wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out. They can be pretty destructive to your sweet potatoes, but I think they're really cool and they haven't been destructive so far, so I'm gonna leave them be. The sun went away for a second, so it's easier to get one in frame. And this one is moving around pretty vigorously, so I wanted to show that as well. They move around these plants like you wouldn't believe. They're very fast and they travel quite a bit in the course of a day, which I just think is super cool. I also think they just have the most interesting face. Now that the sun's gone, I think it's a little easier to see the face. But there's so much texture and they're so unique. They do remind me a little bit of a tomato hornworm, but other than that, I just think they're very striking, and that's part of why I like having them around. I just enjoy coming out in the garden and checking on them every morning. The other thing I wanted to show off is in my propagation tent. And recently I took all the Hoyas out of one of the layers because I'm growing peppers inside, and I might use the rest of this area to start my fall seeds because it's still 100 degrees outside every day, guys. And I cannot, last year I tried starting the fall brassicas outside and it didn't work. We keep it in the 70s in our house, so I'm thinking maybe. And I've grown full-blown peppers in my house, which I never thought that just with the grow light I could have peppers. Now I started these from seed on March 1st, and I started them inside thinking I was going to bring them outside. These were the only two that survived, mostly because I had a few more. When I up potted them, most of them died. So these are the two that made it, survival of the fittest. And it's just, I didn't realize how much acclimation they would need to come out of their humidity trays. So part of that is my bad. But I've got two gorgeous plants with me right here. This is a candy cane bell. The variegation is so much different under the grow light than it is outside. It's so much more marbled and it looks beautiful. I am obsessed with this. I grew it from seeds from my mom's plants back in Pennsylvania. So it has a little bit of sentimental value as well. And if you didn't already notice, there is a full-blown bell pepper on this plant, and it's been growing steadily. I will say, compared to the size of my peppers and my pepper plants outside, these are pretty small. I'll give you that. I've also kept them in this size pot until recently. This one got an up pot a couple weeks ago. I didn't want them getting too big because I've only got so much grow light, and if they got too much bigger, I'd have to bring them outside and they wouldn't do well. They're not acclimated to these kinds of temperatures, and they really should have gone outside in the spring, but I got them started late and then it was getting too hot and I just didn't want to deal with all of that. So I thought, why not keep them growing inside? And it worked because pepper plants have perfect flowers, meaning they have both the male and female parts in the flower. All I have to do is take a flower and just give it a flick and we're good to go. This one, unfortunately, is starting to look really sad. It's called the Corbaci, and it needs a bigger pot. This one I repotted not long ago, and it's already got roots coming out of the bottom there. You can see them a little bit. So, I mean, I could even repot this one again soon. So this one really needs a repot, and that's what I'm gonna quickly do with you guys here this afternoon. I will admit, this is a bit unconventional for me. I typically do all of this outside because I grow pepper plants outside, but at this point, I think these two pepper plants count as houseplants. I don't know, do you agree? I think they're just houseplants at this point. So I'm gonna repot it like one. I did get some dirt from outside. I got just a silly little plastic nursery pot because at the end of the day, they're just peppers. I don't grow them for the foliage, I grow them for the fruit that I eat, with the slight exception of the variegated ones because, I mean, they look so cool. I mean, I have to grow it for the foliage a little bit too. If I could get variegated versions of all of my pepper plants, I think that's all I would grow because they look super cool. But I have some dirt from outside in here and just a clear pot in here. I'm gonna try and bury this plant a little bit. I think that will help with the stem because the roots are a little bit more exposed than I'd like. But I think I'd also like to put some dirt at the bottom first. So I put in a little layer. I'm gonna try and squeeze this out. I'm sure it's super root bound. Oh yeah, guys, this is so embarrassing. That is so root bound. Oh, this poor thing. Though I do really like, it's not very messy if you just pull the whole thing out. So I'm gonna bury the stem a little bit in this pot and then just pour some dirt around it. I haven't ever fertilized these pepper plants too, which is probably part of why they're growing so slow. I mean, they've been growing since March without anything but water and a grow light. But it's just an experiment for fun at this point. I do have peppers growing pretty well outside this year, but I just thought this would be fun. And if this continued to work well, if I can start some seeds inside, if I can grow more peppers inside, how cool would that be? So that's pretty much it. I'll probably give it a drink and maybe some fertilizer. Should I go outside and get the espoma or just I'll probably use the espoma because I don't know how organic all the fertilizers I have here are. I mean, the orchid spikes from Miracle Grow, they're not organic, so we're not using that. But this plant recently started flowering, I wanna say this week, and that's also when the foliage started to decline. But I do have peppers growing, which is a lot of fun. I think there's one over here too. Lots of new blooms opening. The other one didn't bloom as much, the candy cane, and every single bloom fell off except for the one. But that plant also needs a lot more light than this one. I think that's why the leaves are starting to turn a little yellow and not do as well on this plant, because it's so close to the grow light when it doesn't want to be, doesn't need to be. The other one needs a lot more to photosynthesize because there's not as much green on the leaves of that plant. Just a little bit of science there behind it, but I think some fertilizer might also help this plant be stable. I think the repot certainly is going to help. I still think it looks really cute. Like, could you imagine just having a pepper as a houseplant just sitting there? That might be the goal. If I could just grow designer peppers instead of some of these other plants, that would just be wild to me. I don't hate it. I don't hate that idea. I might see how long I can keep these plants alive in here. Maybe overwinter them, transition them outside in the spring. Maybe just keep the variegated one in here since it likes being close to the grow light. I could even put it in there, treat it as a houseplant, see what happens. I'm here for this experiment. Let me know what you think. Have you ever grown a pepper or any kind of vegetables solely inside? If so, I want to know how it went because this has been really fun and I haven't talked about it a lot but since probably April, because there were a lot of seeds in there until April, these have taken up just that bottom shelf all by themselves. And they've just been living their best life, surviving, thriving, a little bit of in between. And it's been really cool to watch them grow. So that's it for our video today. A little bit more unstructured, I guess, than a lot of the videos I put out. But they were two really cool things that I just wanted to share, and they didn't go with anything else, so I figured I'd just put them together. I think raising caterpillars is so much fun, and I also think it's really cool to discover new species coming to your garden. That's part of why I love to garden. The ecosystem in my garden is immaculate. I love it so much. I have parasitic wasps, I have bees, I have butterflies, I have monarchs, I have everything. And it's so much fun. As someone who used to be afraid of bees because I am allergic as a child, I love that I've gotten over that, and I love having them in my garden. I love cultivating that ecosystem and keeping all of those species happy. I also really love experimenting with my pepper plants. I love that I've been able to grow a whole pepper indoors. I could eat that pepper right now if I wanted to, but I want to see it turn red. Dang it, I really want to see it fully ripen and turn red, so that is my next goal for it. And possibly next year I'll do some more experiments with my peppers just for fun. But if you like this video, make sure to give Nutmeg and I here a thumbs up down below and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.